Sehr geehrte Aktionärinnen, sehr geehrte
Aktionäre, shareholders,
sehr geehrte Aktionärsvertreterinnen und
shareholders representatives,
meine sehr verehrten Damen und
and
Herren.
ladies and gentlemen.
Mein Name ist
My name is Heinz-Gerhard Wente. I'm chairman of the Supervisory Board, and I now open this year's AGM of the Salzgitter AG, and in accordance with the Articles of Association, I will chair the meeting. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all, also on behalf of the Management Board and the Supervisory Board. It would have been nice to have welcomed you personally to our AGM. However, the special circumstances do not allow this year again. As you saw from the convening of the AGM, the Executive Board decided, based on the Corona legislation and with the consent of the Supervisory Board, to hold this year's AGM again as a virtual annual general meeting without the physical presence of the shareholders and their proxies. In doing so, we are making use of the option granted by legislation in the two stock corporations until the end of August 2022. In addition to the Executive Board, which is fully represented, the Deputy Chairman of the Supervisory Board, Dr. Orban, is also here, and as is Public Notary Dr. Gulich, who will take the minutes of the AGM. The other members of the Supervisory Board are connected via the internet and are probably here on the screen and have the opportunity to communicate with me and the members of the Management Board if necessary. In addition, the proxies of the company are also present in this room. The virtual AGM enables us to protect your health and the health of our service providers and employees in the best possible way. In addition, holding this AGM as a virtual meeting means that you, our shareholders, also have the chance of making all pending resolutions in a timely manner and without having to indefinitely postpone the AGM. We are aware that holding a virtual general meeting necessarily involves certain restrictions on the rights of shareholders. In particular, shareholders and the management of the company cannot enter into dialogue as is usual in the context of a general debate. In order that you can also exercise your shareholder rights appropriately at the virtual general meeting, the company has given you various options within the scope legally provided and technically feasible. The online service means that you can exercise your rights via the online service until I finally call for the vote, as would be the case at a normal general meeting. It is also possible to file an objection via the online service, and in addition, registered shareholders were able to put questions to the Management Board in the run-up, and we will address all of these questions today after hearing from Mr. Groebler. We also assume that during this difficult period we are acting in your interest. Once again, we will be offering a simultaneous translation of Mr. Groebler's speech from German to English, and you can change your language settings on this website if you wish. If you have any technical problems with the Investor Portal, please contact our hotline directly, and you can find the contact details on the back of your registration confirmation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to everyone who helped prepare and conduct this AGM. If you've ever attended an AGM personally, you know that we traditionally commemorate those members of the company who have died since the last AGM. We do that before we enter the agenda. Those people did their best for our company. This year, we would, however, also like to commemorate not only our deceased colleagues, but also those people who have died in connection with the pandemic and the current war of Russia against the Ukraine. We are aware that both events represent a human tragedy for many people. May I also ask those present here to hold a few moments' silence as a sign of empathy. Thank you for your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the agenda, I would like to point out there have been a number of changes to the Supervisory Board since May 19, 2021. Mr. Klingebiel was elected by the last general meeting as an additional or neutral member of the Supervisory Board, and Mr. Barburg as a shareholder representative. These gentlemen therefore succeed Dr. Teckmeier and Dr. Köster, who resigned from their posts. Furthermore, the District Court of Braunschweig appointed Ms. Peel with effect from July 22, 2021, and Mr. Blumers as of July 1st, 2021, as new employee representatives. They succeeded Ms. Bundenbach and Mr. Lautenroth, who resigned from their posts. The only, but of course not insignificant change to the Executive Board since the last AGM was that, as announced, Professor Fuhrmann left the Executive Board as of the end of June 30th, 2021, and Mr. Groebler then took over as Chairman of the Executive Board on the following day. Let me move on to the formalities. Today's annual general meeting was convened by publication in the Federal Gazette on April 21st, 2022, with notification of the complete agenda and the proposed resolutions of the Supervisory Board, and, as applicable, the Management Board for items 2 to 9 on the agenda. I note that the AGM was convened in correct form and in a timely fashion. In addition to the announcement in the Federal Gazette, the convening of the AGM, according to information from the Management Board, was communicated to the intermediaries, to shareholder associations and other persons entitled to information in accordance with the statutory provisions. On April 21st, 2022, the invitation to the AGM meeting was forwarded to those publications and media such that it can be assumed that the information has been disseminated throughout the European Union. I further note that the following documents have been available on the Internet at the Salzgitter website since the AGM was confirmed, and also during this AGM in accordance with the statutory provisions. In other words, the convening of today's meeting, including the agenda with the proposed resolutions of the management, the approved annual financial statements of Salzgitter AG and the approved consolidated financial statements as of 31st December 2021, the combined management report of Salzgitter AG and the Group for financial year 2021, the report of the Supervisory Board, and the Management Board's proposal for the appropriation of retained earnings. The same applies to the explanatory report of the Executive Board on the information in accordance with Section 289 and Section 315 of the Commercial Code, and the information and documents required to be accessible pursuant to Section 124 of the Companies Act. This year, we will also keep a list of participants. This will list the company proxies present in the room and the shareholders they represent. The list of, depending upon the list of shareholders, changes to that. If powers of attorney are granted or revoked, that list will also be updated. I would now like to provide you with the following details of the participants of the shares. Several proxies represent 26 million shares are represented. This represents 44% of the registered capital. In addition, we have postal votes for 48,000 shares. That adds up to 41 million shares, and that represents 69% of the registered capital. The number of votes cast via the proxies of the company and the number of votes cast by post is decisive for voting. Ladies and gentlemen, after my introductory remarks and the report by the Management Board, we will respond to the questions submitted by shareholders in a timely manner. After the questions have been answered, we will move on to the agenda items and the resolutions. A few notes on voting. Voting in today's AGM is possible via the online service using the individual access data printed on the voting rights card, by postal vote and by authorizing the proxies of the company, until the point in time in today's AGM at which I close the voting on the agenda items. I will announce the closure of voting beforehand. Until the voting is closed, you can still change the vote you have already cast in the way mentioned. I'll remind you to vote again when the time comes, but I would like to ask you now to cast your votes in good time. Information on exercising voting rights can also be found on the invitation and on the company's website for the annual meeting. The company will vote by releasing the positive votes in accordance with your instructions on the individual items on the agenda. Postal votes received by the deadline will also be taken into account when determining the voting results. Today, the votes will be counted using this additional method, so yes votes and no votes are added together. The total is the share capital represented at the meeting. It is then determined whether the resolution proposal was approved or not. Abstentions are not counted. The voting process and the counting of votes are monitored by the notary who has checked the technical requirements in advance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering the you can now see the agenda. First of all, let me go through agenda items 1 to 9. Presentation of the approved annual financial statements of the Salzgitter AG and the consolidated financial statements as of 31 December 2021 with a combined management report and the report of the Supervisory Board. Point 2, resolution on the appropriation of the balance sheet profit. Point 3, resolution on the discharge of the members of the Management Board. Point 4, resolution on the discharge of the members of the Supervisory Board. Point 5, appointment of the auditor for financial year 2022. Point 6, resolution on an authorization to increase the share capital with the option of excluding subscription rights, authorize capital 2022, and on a corresponding amendment to the Articles of Association. Point 7, resolution on an authorization to issue of bonds with warrants, convertible bonds, profit participation rights and/or participating bonds, or combination of these instruments with the possibility of excluding subscription rights, the creation of new conditional capital 2022, and a corresponding amendment to the Articles of Association. Point 8, resolution on the approval of the remuneration report, and point 9, amendment of the Articles of Association. In the invitation, you will find the resolution proposed by the Management Board and the Supervisory Board for the individual items on the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, before the Management Board report, I would like to briefly go through the work of the Supervisory Board in 2021. The Supervisory Board held 6 meetings in the past financial year. These involved detailed discussions with the Management Board on the course of business and the situation of the company, including effects of the corona pandemic. Between meetings, the Board was continuously informed about the development of individual business areas and of major group companies. We questioned the deviations from the plans as presented at the beginning of the year, and the work of the Supervisory Board focused mainly on the following 2 topics. Firstly, the central topic of the work of the Supervisory Board throughout the financial year was the crucial issue of the future of low CO2 steel and the Salzgitter program. In steel production, iron ore was traditionally smelted using coal as reducing agent and energy source. This creates considerable amounts of carbon dioxide emissions. In order to emit carbon dioxide, the European Union has required that emission certificates be purchased. This involves not only additional costs, but irrespective of this, we also want to make the best possible contribution to achieving the goal of significantly reducing national and global CO2 emissions. For this, it will be necessary to implement completely new process technologies in steel production. This will involve considerable investments in the medium term. The Supervisory Board focused on this complex topic at an extraordinary meeting in February of this year in order to become familiar with these various facets of this forthcoming transformation process. And point 2, since the last quarter of the financial year, the Supervisory Board also focused on the group's new strategic direction. An extraordinary meeting was held in November that was exclusively dedicated to this topic, and at which the Supervisory Board had the Executive Board provide details on the status of considerations with respect to Salzgitter AG 2030 strategy, and this was discussed intensively with the Executive Board members. This topic also played an important role during the course of the year. The focus was on the company's orientation towards circular solutions such as decarbonization of steel production, the concentration on sustainably oriented business areas, and linked to these aspects the company's renewed external image. So much for my report on the main aspects of the Supervisory Board activities. The detailed report can be found on the company's website, starting on page 6 of the annual report. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to give you some explanations on the resolutions proposed by the Supervisory Board. Under item 2 of the agenda, it is proposed to distribute a dividend of 75 cents per dividend eligible share for financial year 2021. The Supervisory Board is of the opinion that this proposal represents an appropriate balance between the legitimate dividend interests of the shareholders and the company's need for accumulation. Under item 5 of the agenda, the board proposes reappointing Ernst & Young as auditor for 2022. The company has been working with us since 2020. The audit committee of the board monitored the auditing work and was satisfied with the quality of the audit, so that we can, with a clear conscience, propose that you re-elect this company as auditor. Items 6 and 7 of the agenda propose to replace the authorizations to issue shares from authorized capital and to issue certain bonds and the associated additional capital, which expired at the end of May this year, replace them with new ones, each for a 5-year term. This does not result in any significant changes. In the future, the Board of Management should be able to optimally use the possibilities of the capital market with the interests of shareholders and to achieve any short-term capital requirements of the company. Item 8 on the agenda is a proposal that the report of the remuneration of the Management Board and Supervisory Board members, which is to be prepared for the first time for financial year 21, to be approved due to a change in the law. Finally, under item 9 of the agenda, it is proposed to amend the company's articles of association so that in the future the Supervisory Board members need no longer be elected by the AGM for the maximum legally possible period, but can also be elected for shorter periods. On the other hand, the possibility should be opened up for members of the Supervisory Board to be able to take part in the company's general meetings by means of video and audio transmission, insofar as this makes sense on an individual basis. So much for the proposed resolutions and for the applicable, for the Management Board as applicable. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to ask Mr. Groebler, the CEO of Salzgitter AG, to present his supplementary comments on the Management and Group Management Report for 2021 and to give the AGM a report on the current financial year. Mr. Groebler.
Thank you very much. Dear shareholders, dear friends of Salzgitter AG, ladies and gentlemen, I too would like to extend a warm welcome to you to today's annual general meeting. I would have liked to greet you personally because it's also my first AGM, but unfortunately developments and official regulations regarding the corona pandemic were still so uncertain that at the time of the invitation we had to decide on a digital AGM this time too. But we're looking forward to a face-to-face AGM next year. Before I come to Salzgitter AG, let me briefly address the Russian attack on Ukraine. This war is a human tragedy. It brings nothing but suffering, pain, and sadness to the heart of Europe. We, all employees of the Salzgitter Group, condemn this war in the strongest possible terms. I'll give you 2 examples how we as a company are committed to helping people. First of all, we experienced a broad wave of solidarity throughout the company. Employees, co-determination, management, all of us are on board. The employees have donated more than 100,000 euros, and really I'm so proud of that. We doubled that and matched it and provided an additional 500,000 euros for emergency aid. And on top of that, the Salzgitter AG initiative has been started with the Steel Action Model, in which all integrated iron and steel works are involved with this job, and training opportunities for refugees from Ukraine and Germany. The aim is to offer prospects for the time with us and training for the period of reconstruction in Ukraine. And I look forward to everyone who gets a perspective in our company. Let me add something, if I may. We know and experience the daily discussion of how to make ourselves independent with our energy. One way would be the LNG terminals that are being discussed now in the political field. And we are already producing the pipes through which the gas will flow from the terminals into the German gas network, into the grid at Wilhelmshaven. This is the type of pipe that is being manufactured right here at this site, and so we're already active in the solution of finding the solution to our energy independence. And just now, in these politically and economically uncertain terms, strong companies are needed, companies like us, like the Salzgitter AG. I will show you how that Salzgitter AG got through 2021 well, and I'll give you examples. The strongest corporate profit in over 10 years, stock price 45% up at 0.75 euros. We proposed the highest dividend since 2008, and we also got off to a good start in 2022. Very strong first quarter, a new strategy, Salzgitter AG 2030, which we communicated in February, and accelerating our journey from grey steel to green steel. And this is a new thinking for a new industry. But a company can only be successful if the employees feel okay and if they're healthy. Therefore, health and safety, occupational safety is therefore a top priority for me as CEO. Every employee, whether from our own company or from external companies, should leave our plants as safe and healthy as they have come to work. And this graphic shows a positive development of our accident rate. You see, 2020, it was the corona pandemic. We had less activities in our plants. Positive development, but we still have a long way to go. A rate of 13.6 is clearly too high for me, too high for all of us. That's why we do a lot to increase occupational safety. One example is the health and safety days at Salzgitter Flachstahl. We have a few pictures that we like to look at now. So this is the first time that we carried out these health and safety days. More than 2,000 employees, from trainees to work directors, have accepted this offer and go through various stations, from virtual fire extinguishing exercises to health parkour to accessing your own working environment. Offered on 13 days, including weekends from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning, to enable shift workers to also participate. I can tell you the feedback was consistently positive and will hopefully be reflected in improved occupational safety in the future. For me, health and safety is responsibility and success for the company. That's a big factor. Now let me take a look at numbers. And we go from the outside to the inside. Let's take a look at the commodity and energy prices. First of all, we look at the raw material and energy prices, and they have developed very dynamically. You see, all graphs show exponential developments. In other words, we are operating now in an environment of very strong and sometimes historical price developments for more than 18 months now. And this has to be managed. It has to be managed actively, and we do that with our very successful hedge portfolio. And this enabled us to financially mitigate some of these cost increases. The prices for our products have also risen sharply in the past 18 months, especially in the second and third quarters, which is also then reflected in the results for 2021. The price developments are not a European phenomenon. Internationally, we see similar tendencies. In North America, inflation is even more pronounced. You see that on the right-hand chart in the black curve. At the moment, however, the markets are falling in contrast to the commodities, so that we are assuming a challenging second half of the year, for which we are well prepared. How so? I will show you in a minute. Despite these price developments, we are looking forward to a very successful 2021. We see the good performance of the plants enabled very good crude steel volumes. External sales are scratching the 10 billion euro mark, and we have thus recorded the best pre-tax result for more than 10 years. And my sincere thanks goes out to all of our employees, without whom such a success would not have been possible. The financial successes are a highlight, but there is more. On the one hand, we reported to you about the new heat treatment plant in Ilsenburg at the last general meeting. This is now received by our customers due to the outstanding product qualities, and they receive it very well. On the other hand, we will start our new hot-dip galvanizing line at the Salzgitter site in the coming weeks. I have brought to you a short movie for that. So the aim is to expand the range of hot-dip galvanized steel to 1.5 million tons per year once the new plant has started up. And the new hot-dip galvanizing line 3 has an annual capacity of 500 tons. And this increases our hot-dip galvanizing capacity by more than 1/3. Around 200 million would be the investment sum, as you see it here in these images. And the target customer segment here, of course, is the automotive sector. What I'm impressed with is the fact that despite Corona and the supply chain issues, the system was delivered on time and has already been started up, and our customers are happy. As shareholders, you are particularly interested in three things, of course: the company's performance, which is more impressive, as just shown. You've just seen it. And then, of course, the stock performance, and of course, you want to hear about our dividend policy. This is what I'm talking about now. We are very pleased that the performance of the Salzgitter AG share is so clearly positive. Not only in absolute terms, with a plus of 75% at the end of May since the beginning of 2021, but also relative to the most important indices, such as the steel index or the DAX. The reasons for this? Well, not only is it the market development in the steel sector, but also it is the confidence of the markets in what we are able to do in our strategic orientation, Salzgitter AG 2030, and of course in our outstanding employees. Dear shareholders, now it's about your participation in our success. I can tell you, your commitment and trust are paying off. Our proposal is this: we pay out a dividend of 75 cents per share. And this dividend would be the highest since 2008. And based on the closing price in 2021, there is a dividend yield of well over 2%. I'm sure you will all agree that we can call 2021 a successful year. Successful in the dimensions of financial performance, operational performance, and resilience, as well as strategic development. And we used this starting position and started the year 2022 just as successfully. Especially the first 3 months were exceptionally strong, with a result of 465 million euros, and that across all business areas. And in particular, of course, the business is supported by the areas of steel production and trading. Now, you may ask, how does Russia's attack on Ukraine affect us? Well, since the first day, we put into effect a task force that will look at the situation in Ukraine. We now know that the impact on our business is limited. Less than 0.7% of sales are done with Russia and Ukraine. Our raw material deliveries, especially iron ore and coal, are virtually unaffected. We don't get any coal or ore from Russia or the Ukraine, but of course there are indirect effects: electricity, gas prices, and uncertain sales markets, automotive, cable harnesses, and that some of the plants have standstills. Some of these effects are noticeable, but they can be managed actively. And we as a company know how to respond. My conclusion is this: the start of the year is very encouraging and has prompted us to make the following forecast. We are convinced that in 2022 we can achieve a sales of almost 11 billion euros. That is a pre-tax profit in the range of 750 to 900 million euros and a return on investment equivalent to the previous. Here we assume, and that's the effects of the supply chain disruptions and the Ukraine conflict will remain at the current level and not increase further. An abrupt termination of gas deliveries, for example, would certainly also have an impact on Salzgitter AG, which cannot be reflected in a respectable fashion in any forecast. All in all, a very positive and encouraging view of 2022 for all of us. In addition, we will consistently implement our Salzgitter AG 2030 strategy, which we have developed last year and published, as I said, in February. We're working on implementing it. Our Salzgitter AG 2030 strategy, this is a topic that is particularly important to me, and therefore I want to focus on it now. In July of the last year, we announced that we wanted to review Salzgitter AG's strategy and gear it to the current challenges. We analyzed 4 thematic blocks: the strategy itself, who or what is it that we want to do in 2030 or later? What kind of company do we want to be? What would be the right portfolio to support the strategy? How can we improve our business efficiency? How can we realize that? And what are the enablers are necessary and useful to put this strategy into practice? And we have been guided by 3 strategic cornerstones. First of all, circular economy. Steel is the perfect representative of a circular economy. It is versatile in use. In our society, you will see so many areas of use of steel, small and big. Steel can be recycled. It's very efficient. And we have an industry of scrapping, of scrap recycling that we can reuse again in our plants to make new plants. Circular economy, that's one of the strategic cornerstones. Second, of course, profitability. Sufficient profitability secures the necessary means and resources for a self-determined and independent future. And last but not least, growth and and customer-oriented solutions. Through closer interaction with our customers and an even better understanding of our customers, individual growth can then be achieved in stable markets, and that's where we want to go. Basically, this means that Salzgitter AG will remain an independent and diversified group in the future, which relies on products and services which are profitable in the long term. The strategy is essentially based on our vision and mission. Let me single out three terms here. First, circular. As I just said, we will align the group's products and services accordingly and focus on those markets in which we can advance the aspects of circular economy. Second, pioneering. Salzgitter AG wants to and will lead the way. Our ambitious program is certainly the best example, Salzgitter. Salzgitter is the transformation of the Salzgitter site from a coal and blast furnace-based and thus CO2-intensive one to a steel production towards that is based on hydrogen and thus basically CO2-free. And the third pillar is partnering. Such a transformation is difficult to achieve successfully on your own. In the past few months, we have concluded first partner agreements with companies that want to join us on the path to industrial decarbonization and with whom we can generate added value that we would not be able to achieve on our own. As you see, we live what we believe in. We create a new way of thinking for a new industry. And with the successful implementation of our strategy, we will be the strongest steel and technology group in Europe in terms of transformation ability, profitability, and attractiveness as employer for our current employees and for future generations. And we will be pioneers in low CO2 steel production in terms of time and quality. We can and want to gain market share here. And we will secure the future viability of the group and thus secure valuable jobs, not only here at Salzgitter site, but everywhere where we're active. And with this strategy, we stand for people, steel, and technology. Salzgitter AG has dealt with the issue very early on as to how to produce steel without CO2 emissions in the future. Salzgitter describes our path to this. In the summer of 2021, we already made a decision that the Salzgitter program should be implemented quickly and comprehensively. So we have the current social trends. We have anticipated the current and social trends. And we also anticipated the political decision that were to be taken based on this, as can be seen very clearly from the current discussions in Brussels. And we have demonstrated that we are already on the right track here with various preparatory projects that can also be seen. Look at this movie. We have set up the entire process chain from renewable energies to electrolysis and direct reduction. In this way, we are already gaining experience with the processes that we will be using on an industrial scale starting in 2025. And we also operate what is currently the world's largest high-temperature electrolyzer for the production of green hydrogen that has recently achieved a record efficiency of 84%. And here you see the reduction plant as it is being built. Our wind park right here at Salzgitter. Our plan is that we will ask the Supervisory Board for an investment decision for the first phase this summer. And in this first phase, a blast furnace is replaced by a direct reduction plant and an electric arc furnace. These are scheduled to go into operation as early as 2025. And phase 2 Then we have, in 2030, another reduction plant and another electric arc furnace, and then phase 3 should complete the transformation by 2033 at the latest. And then we will have fulfilled our CO2 mission, which is a reduction of 95%. To secure our transformation, we have defined 5 so-called control points, which we will occupy strategically. Number 1, we will have the access to high-quality scrap sources. That's again an element of circularity. We make new products out of the old scrap. So number 2, we have to have access to green electricity and green hydrogen. We do that with Daimler, our company. We are well positioned in the market, but we will have to increase the quantities to make sure we have that access. And the other 2 is, again, like I said, the access to green electricity and to green hydrogen. So we are leaving the blast furnace route, and we will have green electricity based on green hydrogen. So these are the 2 forms of energy we want to secure, enough green electricity, and we do that with partners. I will talk about that in a minute. But when we're talking about green hydrogen, we want to help to develop this market and to position ourselves at an early stage. Next point, we need an access to high-quality so-called DR ore pellets. We need to make sure that we have direct access. We need the right quantities at the right quality, of course, and that must be secured. And last but definitely not least, we have to have the access to technology for the DRI plants and electric arc furnaces. We must have the direct access. We are talking 2 partners about this. And this is where our partnering approach comes into play. And this, I ask you now to look at the lower part of the image that you see on your screen. We want to continue developing this ecosystem. Look at the partnership with Ørsted. They are the #1 company for offshore wind parks in construction operation. Together we strive to establish close value chains in our business relationship, delivery of offshore wind power, use of sustainability produced hydrogen, also for the reduction of low CO2 steel. And Ørsted needs that. Only then can they lower their CO2 production in Scope 3, because such a wind park, each one needs about 3,000 tons of steel. And the third point is each mill, in case when they have to go to scrap, they are great sources of scrap that we can, once they're decommissioned, that we can use again. I mean, the wind turbines can be used for the steel production process. I mentioned enablers a minute ago. Boundary conditions that are important for the successful implementation of our Salzgitter AG strategy 2030 is this. I would like to single out 2 issues. First of all, we need lean structures. We live in a volatile world where we need lean and flexible structures. We have to immediately respond to new situations, and we have therefore decided to streamline our group structure and go from 5 business areas to 4. In this way, we are positioning our group for the transformation that has been initiated in a lean, powerful, and market customer-oriented manner. And the next one is portfolio management. In some areas, active portfolio management is already common practice. And we extend this practice to the entire group and consider our portfolio, in particular, from a strategic point of view. Which business area fits the strategy? Where can and do we want to grow? And where should we reduce our commitment? And we will be more active here in the coming months and years. We have also expressed our ambitions in concrete figures and translated them into a scorecard, which you see here. We use that to measure achieving the financial and non-financial KPIs newly set as a part of the Salzgitter AG 2030 strategy. This makes our aim transparent and gives you the chance to see where exactly we're at on our journey, where we already have achieved the objective and where we still need a bit of time to travel there. So these are quite a few KPIs. And one point I should like to stress on, our goal is that as of 2025 have an EBITDA margin of between 8% and 10%. That means nothing less than consolidating the exceptional results of great years like the last one. Shareholders, thank you very much for your interest. You saw in my input that we live in turbulent times, and your Salzgitter AG is well positioned. We see the world changing rapidly, and your Salzgitter AG is pointing the way to success with a clear strategy. You are invested in a company of which you can be proud, because we are proud of it too, because we will shape a new industry with this new thinking, and we look forward to you continuing to accompany us on this path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Groebler, for that detailed report, very interesting details, and your explanations on the current situation. Now we shall move on and address the questions submitted by the shareholders in the run-up to the annual general meeting. The freely accessible transmission of the meeting on internet terminates at this point. Our online service does, of course, allow shareholders user access data and continue to follow the meeting to the end.